Hi, I'm Greg Ullin with Reynolds & Reynolds, and this is Connected. Really excited about this conversation. I'm sitting down with Jason Pappas. Jason is the executive manager at Copeland Chevrolet up in kind of the Boston area. Jason, thanks so much for joining me today.
No problem. Happy to be here.
So, Jason, we were chatting a little bit before we started recording, but the first time we actually met, I got to talk to you. I was selling fixed ops products for Reynolds, and you were, I think, a recently promoted service manager, probably at the Toyota store at the time. And
Correct.
I never forget working with you because of, honestly, your curiosity. We ended up, I think we were talking about, it might have been technician dispatching. And we were looking at automating, dispatching in the shop, and ended up with like a 3.5 hour conversation. And I swear we ended up in like the parts pricing matrix screen, in the deep in the setups of Reynolds. And I'll never forget that because I learned a lot, right, going that deep, and you kind of helped me, and you had a lot of questions, but that curiosity, it always stuck with me. And it seems like it's treated you pretty well over the years. So I wanted to start, if you don't mind, on your thought process and really going deep. I mean, you're the executive manager at a pretty successful Chevy store. I think you turned it around, honestly, when you took over that store as GM. But I wanted to get your take on, understanding to the detail how things work in a store and kind of your journey.
We did meet. I was parts and service director at a Toyota store, and we were, putting in electronic dispatch, which seems like ancient technology nowadays with AI, all the evolution of all these AI products and everything. So, we implemented that in a very busy service department there. 26 technicians, over 120 hours a day. It was a busy shop. And then, I was successful at turning that around, and we purchased a Chevrolet store on Main Street in Brockton, and the store was kind of in trouble. That's why it was being sold. We took it over, and now we're top 10 in the Boston market for new car Chevrolet sales, and top 10 for GM certified car Bravo sales, and we've used a lot of Reynolds technology over the years. I have in my own career, because I've been on Reynolds 22 years now. I've been using Reynolds, so I've been on a lot of product evolutions that you've gone through, and certainly you guys have been with me almost my entire career in management to help execute and run these stores. So we use a lot of your newer stuff today, the AI powered tools that continue to help us be successful on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, can we dig in a little bit, Jason? I am curious, throughout your career, you've obviously grown with the store, with the group. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to learning? Because I think if I remember right, you started really in college, kind of working part-time, and obviously you've learned the business throughout the years. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to learning, both historically, right, as you were coming up through the store, and also today with everything new that's happening? How do you approach learning new things?
I just think, if you're going to be successful in anything, you need to know how things work and how they work together. So understanding just the fundamental basics of how a system works or a process works or departments work between one another, has helped me be successful. Because, if you understand how it all comes together and where the processes might be breaking down, or, you might be running, and you got to learn that first before you can fix it, right? You can't come up with a solution until you really understand the ins and outs of the problem. And I've applied that throughout my career at Copeland Auto Group, and it's helped us be successful because it's just, you got to stay up on everything, right? You got to stay up on new technology. You got to stay up on industry trends, compliance. So, to me, it always starts with how does it work and how does it interact with us, before you can make a decision or act upon that type of stuff.
Yeah. So what inputs do you go get? I mean, you hear the term, at least I do fairly frequently, of kind of first principles, right? And you look at things and you think through things on your own. But I do think you have to have a baseline understanding before you can apply your first principle, thought processes. So, do you go talk to people in the store that are doing the work today? So if you think back when you took over, parts and service department, do you go talk to the techs? Do you go talk to the advisors? Do you go talk to the parts guys and get their perspective? And then who else do you talk to? Who else do you get input from before you can start looking at it through your own lens? Or do you just take a step back and get your own perspective first, and then start getting input from others? Like, what's your process when you're trying to learn something new?
I usually get input from the people on the front line, right? The techs, the service advisors. Sometimes the customers, paying attention to customer feedback, surveys. Things that we can track from customer communications. And then, sometimes just observing too, like where is the process breaking down, or why, or how can we improve this to make the customer experience better? I think the foundation of everything I do at the stores is the customer comes first. And, we look at it from a customer perspective. If I was doing business with this company, how would I want to be treated? How would I expect it to go down? So we try to, get feedback from our employees, our customers, and then, just observing and then taking that information and, improving our systems and processes to be more successful.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned customers a couple of times there. When we first started talking, I said that I remembered you really as a customer. Do you have any customers that you remember that you'll never forget? In my experience, I remembered you in a very positive way. So it could be positive, or I suppose it could be negative too. But are there any customers that stand out to you that are just like, I will never forget that person?
There's probably quite a few of them in my history. So, I think of the ones that we really helped. I saw one gentleman the other day that had bought a new Colorado, and there was a problem with his roof. There was kind of a known issue with Chevrolet, and we were able to get him a new truck. So we took his truck back and got him a better truck that resolved his concerns. And I saw him the other day in the service spot, remembered him and said hello. It was, the roof on his Colorado was rippled. So
oh, wow.
A brand new truck because of the way the reinforcement was. So we were able to get him a new truck with a sunroof, and that kind of resolved his concerns. I think of people like that, I like to remember the people that had, real problems that we were able to fix, but certainly you have some of those customers that, were hot or, over the top that I try to forget those ones.
Well, and those ones that you can fix the problem for too. I mean, that guy's going to remember you for a really long time too, right? And so that kind of two-way street of you're able to solve the problem, and he feels like you took care of him. That's something. Certainly, you'll remember that, but so will he, and he's probably going to be back in. You said you saw him in the service department. I mean, he's probably going to be a pretty darn loyal customer.
I mean, that's what when a customer does have a problem, I look at it as an opportunity to make him a customer for life, because, we're not perfect. Not everything we do here every day is going to be perfect. We work towards that. But, if there's a problem, then we look at it as an opportunity to turn around, make that customer happy, and hopefully make them more loyal to Copeland. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Well, Jason, another thing I want to get into with you, I view you as a really sound operator, a great operator. And, obviously you track a lot of metrics throughout your store. We don't know each other super well, but from when we've talked, you seem like a fairly analytical person. You like to get into the weeds on things. One metric that has my attention right now, I've had a few different conversations around it, and it seems like there's a lot of different angles to it. Is revenue per employee. This one has so many tentacles. When you think about a couple of layers to it. I mean, one, we're in for the most part a no or slow growth environment in our industry. Right, we're going to probably sit around 16 million cars as an industry for the foreseeable future, barring anything crazy going on. So to see growth, we got to focus on other areas, right? We got to focus on F&I, we got to focus on service, we got to focus on those operational pieces of the puzzle. And then you look at employee count in stores, and employee count is almost as high as it's ever been on average. You look at employee compensation, right? Employee compensation has been up probably 40% in the last 15, 20 years, and we haven't necessarily sold more cars or sold more hours even, right? But we continue to increase. Prices go up, but we also increase compensation significantly. So how do we balance that? And I feel like revenue per employee is at least one metric to look at on, okay, how are we making sure that we're getting the most out of our investment in our people? Because our people are extremely important, and we need every one of them that we have, but how can we make them as productive and efficient as possible? So I'll leave it there. I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on that topic, and if you've dug into it at all.
Yeah, I mean, Chevy, we just got back from our annual dealer meeting in Las Vegas, and Chevrolet had a lot of these composites where they compare you to other dealers, and they have different groups, good, better, best, top performing. Our store has always, in terms of gross revenue per employee, has outperformed the composites, according to Chevrolet. And I think a lot of that has to do with the systems we have implemented. An inefficient employee, if you double keying data, I think of our sales desk. We use the Focus CRM and Reynolds desking and all that. All those systems are fully integrated, so we're only entering that data once. And we have 5 stores in our group, and we've taken over non-Reynolds DMS stores and converted them to Reynolds. And one of the efficiencies we always gain immediately with the Reynolds ecosystem is that we're not doing double entry of data. If the salesperson puts that information in the Focus when they meet the customer in sales, that comes up to the desk and then goes to F&I and to our DocuPad and all rolls around. So we've always looked for efficiencies to eliminate waste with data entry, making sure that all the information we have is readily available for our frontline employees, so that they're not searching, does this person have an open RO? Does this person have an open parts ticket? And one of the biggest things that we just implemented was the Reynolds integrated phone system, which pretty much has revolutionized our phone call experience and service. In particular, with the call volume that we get there. Obviously, new car sales, used car sales have kind of been stagnant in the industry. So we've been focused on, growing our fixed operations, to increase that. And one of the great things with the Reynolds integrated phone system is as soon as the customer calls now, they're blown away because we answer the phone. We know who you are. We're not asking you, hey, what's your phone number? How do you spell that? If you listen to the experience before that, it was frustrating because we know who these people are, but you had to find the record. And the only way you could do that is I got to spell the last name correctly. I got to find the last 6 digits of the VIN, or I need a phone number. Now this information, boom, on the screen and gives us an overview of that customer. So that's really helped us drive that revenue per employee and keep that metric strong. And we've also put in, different AI, conversation AI on our phone system, which alerts managers. So before I'd have to sit, all my managers would have to sit and you got to listen to every phone call. Like the calls are recorded, great. But, if you had 100 phone calls, if you wanted to see if there was people handling the calls correctly, you had to listen to all 100. Now we have a tool that sends me an alert and Focus. Hey, customer was upset. There was bad language used on the phone, things like that. So the managers right now, we can sometimes, right as that phone call ends, managers get involved to try to resolve that concern. So, it's really improved our overall operation in every department, sales, parts, service, to have these systems all talking to one another and getting all our information right in front of our employees when they're on the phone or engaging with a customer.
Yeah, no, that's great. I want to double click, if you don't mind, on that topic of phone calls and recording, because you think about, and you can give your experience, but when I was a sales manager, a core function of the job is to make sure that your salespeople are as effective as possible, right? And to do that, you have to listen to phone calls, right? You have to hear what they're saying. You have to find those opportunities, and the flip side of that is you also need to make sure that any upset customer is taken care of and no opportunities are going to the wayside, right? So when you have somebody ready to buy, you need to make sure that they're getting followed up with. That's really the core function of the job. You're negotiating your structure of the deal, sure, but getting those hooks in is so important, and then helping your team and coaching your team is the other piece of it. So you're right in that, you might come in the morning and you get there before everybody else and you pour your coffee and you just go through the phone recordings and you just start listening, right? And it's like, man, that takes a lot of time. Where,
Correct.
and then maybe you find one, maybe you don't, and maybe people have different processes where maybe you listen to one salesperson each day, like their calls for the last week, and so you can kind of get a log, and then you'll meet with them and say, hey, here's 3 examples, or maybe your process is you listen to every call from that day before to make sure nothing's getting missed. Maybe it's some combination of those, but regardless, it takes a bunch of time. And the way you described it, I mean, when you can just come in, or not even come in, having a real-time alert of like, hey, this customer's upset, make sure they get followed up with, and it automatically gets prioritized at the top of your to-do list. I mean, that's pretty powerful when you can cut down that much time.
And the other cool thing is it gives you a transcript. So, once again, listening to calls, extremely time consuming, with all the other duties managers have to do in a dealership. But, this gives you a quick summary of the call. So sometimes you don't even have to listen to the call, and you can kind of weed out, that it wasn't really an issue. We have a lot of shops that buy parts from us locally, mechanical shops. And those guys like to, they swear like sailors. So sometimes you'll get those alerts. They'll say, hey, vulgar language on the call, but you'll look, oh, look, the guy's just buying a part. He's chatting with the parts counter guy, It's just what it is. But it saved us a ton of time, and it does alert us to other things like customer called with the intent to purchase a vehicle. We didn't set an appointment, things like that. So it really just brings the opportunities to the top instead of wasting hours listening to just, queues of phone calls.
Yeah. And well, I tell you what, if you haven't done that in a while, or you haven't done it ever, you think, so when you call into a doctor's office and you're on hold, you feel like it takes a long time when you're on hold, but you're doing something else, right? There is nothing that feels longer than when you're trying to listen to a call and a customer called in yesterday and they're on hold. Like every second feels like an hour. You're just looking at the clock because you look at the recording and it's like, oh, it's a 5-minute call. And then you listen to it and the first 3 minutes is hold music. And it's just like, oh my gosh, there's nothing more painful than listening to that as a manager.
100%.
No, that's great stuff. And I want to kind of tie those two things together that you brought up. So one was, kind of single system and information available across all tools. And the second was, the capabilities that exist now with artificial intelligence. And, when you think about, what the world looks like and looked like in the past with software, in a lot of cases, in a lot of stores, there's a lot of different pieces of software, right? And they're in silos, and a lot of that's almost by design, in that over the years we've grown inside of our stores, right? We have functions that exist today that didn't exist 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And those functions have grown in silos. And so then they develop problems in silos, and then we go fix those problems with software. So we have all this disparate software, and there's duplicate data sets and inaccurate information and missing information across all of them. And to your point, you got to go look and verify and find information in different places. And that slows everybody down. I think is kind of what I heard you say is that can slow processes down, it slows people down. But when we fast forward to today in an artificial intelligence world, right, AI tools aren't going to slow down. They're going to go fast. They're going to execute. And if they're executing off of missing information or inaccurate information or duplicate information, they're going to go fast and do the wrong thing. Right. So that's a whole different problem than, slowing us down a little bit. Now we're looking at, when you're talking about structuring a deal or you're talking about customer communications, that's a lot bigger implications we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it is scary. We have taken the approach to we use AI as a tool with our employees to make them more efficient. Within our CRM. We don't have any tools where AI is directly really communicating with customers. If so, it's very limited, and then as soon as the customer engages, it goes into our teams. We actually just expanded our business development centers here in the building. Speaking of things that changed, our facility was built, like 9 years ago, and we had a service BDC and a sales BDC, but flash forward to 2026, we needed more of those people, and there wasn't enough space. So we actually reconfigured some office space in the facility, and we just opened 2 new BDCs in the building actually last week. So, nice. But we're giving these AI tools to our employees. We have CRM Advisor with Focus. That's a big one that is helping us. We have Curator AI helping us communicate with our customers. It's making our employees more efficient. and these tools can help generate nice conversation with customers, but at the end of the day, a person's behind it, right? We're not just letting the tool send that stuff. So it's made our people more efficient. We do think that there's some fatigue with customers dealing with AI chatbots. It seems like every big company you call now, it's like you got to get. Let me figure out how I can get past this chatbot to talk to somebody who can help me. So we've used a lot of new Reynolds tech to help make our people better, make them more knowledgeable of the customers, generate better responses, but not necessarily let the AI loose, if you will. So,
Yeah.
We're kind of slow walking that. We're big supporters of AI, and we have it in every department right now in the dealership, but we're using it to help our employees, not necessarily communicate with our customers. So.
No, that's great. That's great. I mean, I think our business has always been and still is and will be for the foreseeable future, people, then process, then technology, right? Whatever
Correct.
the technology is. So those people matter the most. The processes you put in place make them as effective as possible, and then the technology can enable them to be as efficient as possible. So, as long as you take that same cadence, I think it makes a lot of sense. And when you talk about implementing AI tools, I really like and appreciate your approach. I do think that there's a lot of ways to implement it, right? I think as long as you can trust what the tool's doing and you believe in it and you can understand it, going back to the earlier point about really digging in and understanding what's going on. There are dealers that are implementing things and they're allowing AI to execute a lot, and as long as you have that that trust in the AI and frankly the data layer that it's operating on top of, that's okay. For you, I think it's a great approach that you're talking about as well, where let's focus on operational efficiency and making our people as efficient as possible, because that's where it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like your people are really where the magic happens in the store.
Correct. And we just want to make sure we're giving everyone an excellent experience. And the AI has improved the customer experience through our employees. And we continue to look at other ways to create efficiencies with AI and use it more effectively every day. You got to be on the cutting edge of all this. Reynolds has really helped us with that. One of the few companies in auto right now that I feel like have taken the multiple layers of data we have from our CRM to our inventory to the DMS and then kind of wrapped it all into one. We do use Curator too. So that's another area of AI that, has helped us in our marketing. We use Curator to communicate with our customers and identify shopping behaviors and stuff. And that's helped, speaking of stagnant car sales, has helped us sell more cars. But the nice thing is with Reynolds, they've been able to take all our data sources and kind of wrap it up into this one system and make sure that we're making, because one system may have information that another doesn't. And when you bring that all together, you're just sending more relevant and timely communications to these customers instead of, mass marketing, if you will, that might not necessarily be relevant. So,
yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. One other topic, we've talked a decent amount about people, and I'm curious, and I don't know, just kind of talking with you and understanding the stores, I assume you have pretty decent employee retention at the stores and across the group likely, but I'm curious your perspective, because I think it's different in different pockets of the country for different people, for different stores. What's harder to do, hire good people or keep good people?
That's both really. We have really good employee retention. I've been with the company 22 years. My desk manager's been here just celebrated 20 years. Our other desk manager's been here 18. I mean, we have a lot of longevity in our company. So I would say once somebody comes on board to Copeland, they're typically they stick around. So I would say hiring good people is probably more difficult.
Yeah.
So
how do you do it?
When you're out there searching for a particular position. So.
Right. So how do you do it? How do you find them? What's your go-to?
Word of mouth. LinkedIn. There's a lot of people locally that know our auto group. In a world that a lot of auto groups have been absorbed into these mega corporations. Like Herb Chambers up here just got bought by Asbury. You see a lot of those huge acquisitions. Where our auto group is still family owned by one guy, Todd Copeland, and it's a different environment. I think how we operate. Though we are an auto group, there's a lot of the GMs at each store are allowed to make decisions, which make us more effective, more agile, in my opinion. So I think people appreciate that. So when we do have positions open, I think a lot of times people search us out. But we weed through it and make sure we put the right people on our team that fit our, they got to fit our culture and, the way we do business. And, customer comes first. And, that's pretty much how we've done it for Copeland's been around for almost 56 years now. So
wow, that's great.
That's how they've done it for a long time. So
yeah. Yeah. So how do you vet the good ones out where, you make sure you're getting the the best fit? You think about an F&I manager, right? I mean,
yeah.
they're looking for a reason, right? And that's a pretty important position in the dealership. So, how do you vet them out so you make sure you get the best?
We do have a hiring platform that we do this caliper personality tests, things like that. We put them through some of that stuff. There's some aptitude tests too, and we make sure that they talk to multiple people that they're going to work with. It's not just one person interviewing one position. We try to have them talk to multiple managers, and we make sure that we get together and say, hey, is this person a good fit for what we're trying to accomplish? So.
Yeah. All right. Well, no, that's good. I mean, I think that that multi-layer interview is a good idea. Good. Well, Jason, what else should we talk about today? What haven't we talked about that we should? What haven't I asked you about that I should have?
How else? I guess how some of our other Reynolds products work together. I don't know if that would move us along. But.
Yeah. I mean, we could get there. Maybe one other thing that I'm interested in from you two and your experience. You went through the NADA Dealer Academy back quite a few years ago, yeah?
Correct. So there was like 08, 09.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of GMs out there, a lot of dealers out there that have been through that program. But I think something that I'm interested in is, as a GM or as a dealer, what should I look for in an employee to warrant me sending them to the Dealer Academy? What, who's the person that I should send? Should I send somebody? What message does that send to them? How do you strategically leverage that for growth inside your organization?
I mean, I think we've always looked for, people who can take a role and be successful with it, but want to do more. Sometimes you have employees that just, I want to be an F&I manager and that's it, and they're good at that. They're good at the job. But I think we look for people that, because operating a dealership is sometimes running 5 or 6 companies under one roof when you consider
it is.
Parts, service, new, used, accounting, and then, so some of us have rental car businesses and other things we're involved in. So, when you're going to go to that school, you got to be prepared to be engaged in all departments. And, when I was selected to send to it, I was involved in sales, BDC, service, parts. I wanted to be involved across the different aspects of the store because, really every day as a general manager, you have to be engaged in all aspects of the business. So, we typically look for people that want to do more than, are successful at X, whether that's selling cars or being a finance manager or being BDC or service advisor, that may want to do more than that position, but stick in the auto industry. So,
yeah. Yeah. When do you think's the right time to send somebody? Is it when you're moving them into a GM role? Is it when they're still in a previous role? What's the timing look like? Because I think that can be a delicate balance, right? And the message that it sends to the person where, hey, my GM or my dealer's sending me to dealer school. Clearly that means they want me to run the store, right? Or run one of the stores. So I don't know, for you, what do you think the perfect timing is for that?
I went through it before I was a GM. I found that pretty beneficial only because I'm not tied down. If you are an active GM, it's not that you can't go through that school and learn anything, but you have so many other responsibilities that I don't know that you got homework you got to do, you got different projects you got to study. If you're in a lesser role like a salesperson or a service advisor, you're more apt to be able to step away and stay focused on what the academy is teaching you and the projects. So I think, before you're a GM, makes it more beneficial to that person than if you go through when you're a GM. I guess when you're a GM, it's nice because you can come act on some of the things you're learning, but you got so many other things to worry about on a monthly and daily basis that, you may not be completely focused.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that it's a requirement, or at least a good idea, to have a plan for that individual? So let's say you have a sales manager, right?
Yep.
Who you're talking to him or her, right? So this person has aspirations. They've talked about wanting to grow inside the store, or inside the group. And one of the ways that you're going to do that is you're going to send them to dealer school. What's the timing look like? Like, do you have to have a plan in place where it's like, okay, if this goes well and you learn, 6 months from now, maybe we're going to buy another store, or maybe we're going to expand, or maybe I'm moving into a new role, whatever. There's a lot of different scenarios, but do you think you need to have that plan in place before sending that person? Because I would imagine one of the worst outcomes would be you invest in this individual, they go off, they learn a bunch of stuff, and then they sit in that same role they were in for a year, they get frustrated, and then they go to some other group, right, and run a store. So
correct. I mean, it's always good with succession planning, or if you're expanding, to have that person lined up. I kind of went down that road myself. The idea was that I would run a store eventually, but it took time, and I stuck with it, and it came through for me. But definitely sending someone with a plan that maybe a sales manager is retiring, or a general manager is retiring, or we are adding another store, that you have that plan in place, so that when that store acquisition finishes, then you're ready to go. So
yeah, that's great. That's great. All right. Well, Jason, I think that's a good place to put a bow on the conversation today. I want to be respectful of your time. So we can definitely come back and do this again sometime soon, I hope. But
right, awesome.
I appreciate you taking time with me today. Jason Pappas, Executive Manager, Copeland Chevrolet. Hope you have a great summer in Boston, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thank you. I was happy to be here. So.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
Have a good one.
Well, I've really enjoyed that conversation with Jason Pappas. Great operator, somebody that, like I said, I've known for quite a while, and I was excited to have him on Connected. I hope you got a lot out of the conversation. Before we hop off, don't forget, you can watch or listen to all episodes of Connected on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify podcasts. And make sure to hit subscribe so you're notified every other week when new episodes are released. Thanks so much. We'll see you in 2 weeks.